get in either, which is why you can't see this.
Are we live now? Do we know? Thank you very much, everyone. Welcome to the Committee on Procedures. This committee meeting will be recorded and broadcast throughout Parliament buildings and online. Members, you are very welcome to use your mobile phones as long as they're in airplane mode and all devices are muted. It's not permitted to take photographs or record any part of this meeting. Members, just to double check with you, has anyone any interest to declare before today's meeting or during today's meeting? I'm just checking online to make sure. Oh, there's a bit of feedback there.
I don't know how to do this.
So, put yourself on mute.
Could you ask broadcasting to come up, please?
I don't know how to do it.
I'm glad this is all sorted out. After a few weeks.
We've mastered this by now, the technology.
I'm just try again.
Okay, members, we're going to go to agenda item 1, which is apologies. Just to note today, these are not apologies, I'm just noting who's online with us today. So today online we're joined by the Vice Chair Sinead Ennis, Danny Donnelly and Robbie Butler, and I've just taken that by the names of the people who are, as they come to me on the screen. We do have apologies today from William Irwin. Anyone else? Any other apologies? If not, then we are quorum, so we'll proceed. Members, taking you to agenda item 2, which is the draft minutes. The draft minutes are at pages 5 to 9 of your meeting pack. Members, just to check with you if you are content that the minutes are a true reflection of the proceedings of the meeting held on the 1st of May 2024. Thank you. I'm getting a few thumbs up there. Yep, that's why I'll sign those. Thank you very much. Okay. Moving then on to agenda item 3, which is matters arising. Item 1 on this is response from the Assembly Acting Head of Communications regarding the broadcasting issues raised by the committee, funnily enough. Just to advise members that the Acting Head of Communications, Michael Cairns, has responded to the broadcasting issues raised by the committee in relation to the meetings on the 13th of March and 17th of April. The relevant correspondence is at pages 11 to 14 of your meeting pack. Members, Michael has advised that following the replacement of broadcasting systems in the Assembly chamber and committee rooms, this was the first significant technical disruption to a committee or plenary meeting. He indicates that the source of the disruption may have originated from 2 unscheduled power outages in recent weeks. However, the relevant suppliers and developers of the software system have been asked to assess what may have caused the incidents. He also highlights that while the broadcasting system in place have been extensively tested, it is inevitable that there will always be some initial teething difficulties. The aim is to minimise such occurrences and to learn lessons when technical issues arise. Members, the letter also refers to the problems encountered by some members with Zoom and strongly recommends that members participating remotely should use Zoom app together with a robust Wi-Fi signal at their location outside of Parliament buildings. If members do not have a robust remote Wi-Fi connection that allows the camera facilities to be on, then Assembly Broadcasting recommends that they attend the meeting in person. Given all of that, I'm going to invite comments from members if anybody wants to say anything.
In public session.
We are.
I mean, the whole purpose of Zoom is because you can't attend. So for them to suggest that you should attend in person, I'm not entirely satisfied, to be honest, Chair. Whilst I think it's preferable we all be in the room, there's occasions where, given actually what we're talking about today, where there's people have different reasons not to be here. Yeah. I don't think it's acceptable for that to be a reasonable explanation if they can't fix the problem themselves. And if they can't fix it, then they need to bring in the expertise that can.
Yeah. I have to say this is the Committee on Procedures, and one of the things that I'm very aware of as the Committee on Procedures that we need to know that procedures can actually happen. So for instance, I am aware in one of the meetings, and I've outlined it to members, that those who were online while there was issues in the room, the people who were online were being broadcast live and they were having a chat between each other, and there was no problem with that chat. But I don't think that the people online knew that they were being broadcast live and the room wasn't available online. And I think that as procedures, my concerns are, if this continues to happen, what happens if a committee needs to take a vote?
Okay.
You know, what happens if, for instance, our vice chair or Robbie or Danny online want to come in and make a comment? Their voice shouldn't be excluded from procedures. The officials have indicated that they are available if the committee requires any further written or oral briefings. So if you want to, I think as Procedures Committee it would be appropriate for us to ask them to come to the meeting just to outline the issues that are happening. The outages didn't happen during our meetings.
Chair, with respect, even when they talk about the teething issues, that's fine. We expect that with the new system. But we're here a number of weeks now. And given that we've already highlighted it and look what we're experiencing today, I'm actually seeing Robbie's name changing from Kevin somebody to Robbie Butler every so many seconds as well. So it's not very consistent in terms of how it's working even when you do get into the room.
Yeah. I think we will. Are members content then that we invite the officials to attend a meeting of the committee to discuss the broadcasting issues? This would also provide an opportunity to get an update on the assessment by the suppliers and developers of the cause of the disruptions. I would like to ask questions as well as what happens if a committee, and we have committees that are taking quite significant decisions at the moment, if they're unable to proceed with hybrid, what's going to happen? Robbie, you have your hand up, you've indicated.
Yep, thank you, Chair. If you remember during COVID, we didn't use Zoom, and the reason we didn't use Zoom is because it wasn't deemed to be secure enough, and we had a system called Starleaf. And there were reasons at the time why we had a system called Starleaf. So Trevor's points are actually they're good. And if we're going to facilitate, particularly at this level, these hybrid meetings, there needs to be that robust. And you've pinpointed it quite well, Chair, in regard to the need to be over the detail, especially this committee being on procedures, because especially when we get to votes and things like that, it's important that we do so. And if we're using hybrid, then it stands up to scrutiny. But I quite like Zoom. In most instances, it works very, very well. But it would be interesting to see where Starleaf has went. I know it was expensive and whether it's disappeared, but what other jurisdictions are using in terms of that software. And it may just be the bandwidth piece that we've been batting for some time now, by the way.
Starleaf, I'm aware, is no longer available, that the Assembly made the decision to move totally to Zoom. But we can certainly ask if you're in agreement for the officers or the officials to come to a meeting just to discuss with us. But I think as the Committee for Procedures, we need to know that this is a robust enough system to handle what our procedures require. And I think that it would be worthwhile. If members, do I have your agreement then that we will write and ask the officers to come and have a chat with us? I know that we're not alone on this. I know that the Chair's Liaison Group have been asking questions about this as well. So I'm getting a thumbs up there from Danny. Everybody else content that we ask the officers to come along? Yeah. I think I would just like them to see you guys online trying to unmute yourselves even to see how that works. But thank you very much for that. We'll get that organised for a future meeting then. Moving on now to agenda items 2 and 3. This is the Speaker's Letter and the Handbook for Members' Bills for the 2022-2027 mandate. Members, a copy of the handbook for the Members' Bills for 22-27 and the Speaker's Letter setting out his ruling on privately drafted bills, both of which were issued to every MLA last week, can be found at pages 15 to 62 of the meeting pack. This is important for ourselves because, as you know, it was agreed at the meeting on the 1st of May, Assembly Legal Services has been asked to draft a standing order to provide for a final deadline of the last sitting day in June of the penultimate session of a mandate for private members' bills to be introduced to the Assembly, so that means first stage. The draft standing order will be considered at the meeting on the 12th of June. Members, paragraph 27 of the handbook refers to the intention to introduce such a deadline in standing orders and outlines that in the current mandate this would mean a deadline of the 30th of June 2026. Members, I'm just asking you to note the position because we've already decided to do that. We now have the clarification through from the Speaker regarding this draft standing order, and we will be looking at that on the 12th of June. This is a fairly straightforward one, and it'll give everyone that absolute deadline. I think knowing as well, having been through that process, that the last time that you can have it read into the House is that, now let me get it, the last sitting day of June in the penultimate session of a mandate will hopefully help actually with a lot of people, not just the Bill's office and the Speaker's office, but everyone, because we know there's always a rush at the end of a mandate for that. So we'll talk about that further on the 12th of June. Agenda item 4, and we go in now into a longer session. This is the provision of proxy voting in plenary for parental leave. You'll find this from pages 64 to 149 of the meeting pack. Members, at the last meeting, the committee made a number of decisions that are listed in the clerk's memo at page 64 of the meeting pack. These decisions included agreeing that any new standing order, as listed in paragraph 1 of the memo on page 65 of the pack, as agreed by the committee, Assembly Legal Services have been asked to prepare a draft standing order for consideration by the committee. Members, the detail associated with the practical operational... we've just had word through that we've been advised to restart the Zoom call. Members will be offline for 30 seconds or so. Is that okay? We'll go into... We'll drop off the Zoom people for 30 seconds, but we won't do anything until you're back in again, folks. So if we can let broadcasting know to go on ahead and do that, please. We'll be back with you shortly.
Can you let broadcasting know? Yeah.
Sure. I'm just letting you know that I'm reading my committee papers on my phone today in case you think that I'm being rude and sitting on my mobile. I'm actually involved in the meeting just using my phone.
It looks like solitaire from here.
No.
How do you see it?
I know. I'm okay reading up close, but I have to wear glasses for distance.
Oh, there we go. Sorry, folks, the Zoom is just dropping out now. Yeah. So if we give them half a minute or a minute or so, hopefully they'll be back in again.
This over, let me see. Yes. There we go.
You mute it still.
I am muted. Can you ask them up?
Committee Room 21. Sound. 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 Committee Room 21. Sound.
All right, members, we're back into public session now. Apologies for that. Just we were having a number of issues with our internal broadcasting system, and apologies to anyone who's watching online. But we're back in session now, and we'll go back to agenda item 4, provision of proxy voting in plenary for parental leave. And members, just to say, this is pages 64 to 149 of your meeting pack. Members, of the last meeting, the committee made a number of decisions that are listed in the clerk's memo at page 64 of the meeting pack. These decisions included agreeing what will be in any new standing order as listed at paragraph 1 of the memo on page 65 of the pack. As agreed by the committee, Assembly Legal Services have been asked to prepare a draft standing order for consideration by the committee. Members, the detail associated with the practical, operational and administrative matters relating to proxy voting will be provided for in guidance. However, before moving on to the guidance, there is one issue to be resolved around the definition of fostering. Robbie Butler had indicated that he would consult some of the adoption agencies and bring something to the committee for its consideration. Thank you very much for doing that, Robbie. The information has been provided and can be found at pages 3 to 9 of the tabled pack. So if you want to look at your tabled papers, and that's pages 3 to 9 of the tabled pack. Members, an extract from Health and Social Care Adoption and Fostering Care webpage can also be found at pages 69 and 70 of the main meeting pack, and it lists the 12 various types of fostering. These are not formally agreed definitions, but rather simply a definition. Member, the proposed standing order is based on providing a formal and transparent arrangement for prolonged periods of parental leave that will allow members who are absent for such periods a method of casting their vote by proxy. In order to help us, I think it would be useful if we moved into closed session just to facilitate a discussion on the definition of fostering that should apply to proxy voting in plenary. So if we could just, if okay to move into closed session for this, please.
Committee Room 21. Sound. 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 Committee Room 21. Sound.
Thank you very much, members, and we're back into open session now. Members, that was a very useful discussion. Just to put on record what we have covered, so we have agreed that fostering and formal kinship care arrangements will be in standing orders, listed in the standing order, and in the guidance then it will make clear that proxy is available for foster carers who are registered for long and short term care, registered kinship carers when a child is placed, and we will get a bit of research done just to make sure that we know when we say registered where that register is and who people will be registered with. I think that was a much easier discussion than I thought it was going to be. Thank you all very much. And Robbie had brought up that it's fostering week, Robbie, so I think that we have done something. Hopefully we will be bringing forward for the first time ever across these islands the opportunities for people who are fosters to be supported by the Northern Ireland Assembly, which it's amazing. Thank you very much, Robbie, and thank you for making sure that we included that for anybody who's looking to become an MLA or is an MLA and wishes to foster, and that will go alongside the other pieces that we're about to speak about. So we've talked about the fostering side of it. We will now move on to what happens for proxy voting in plenary for other parts of parental leave, and I'll refer members to paragraphs 5 to 9 of the clerk's memo at pages 66 to 68 of the main meeting pack for practical and operational matters that may be included in guidance. Members, while it's consideration of these matters that will form the basis of a committee report that will accompany the draft standing order when it's debated in plenary, ultimately it will be for the Speaker to provide any relevant guidance and rulings in relation to the new standing orders, but it is anticipated that the committee's consideration of these matters will be helpful to the Speaker. Members, at the last meeting the committee agreed to write to the Speaker, the Assembly parties and the independent MLA setting out the issues to be considered in relation to proxy voting in plenary for parental leave and inviting any views or comments by Friday the 24th of May, not March. We haven't had responses at this stage, but it's not the 24th of May yet. The Speaker was also invited to provide his thoughts on the temporary procedures that were used to facilitate proxy voting during the COVID pandemic. Members, I'm now going to seek your views, comments on the preferred approach to each of these issues, and you'll find a table 2 at pages 71 to 76 of the meeting pack if you want to move to that. It's just, this might actually help to show how things will work. I'm just sorry, I want to call that up myself. So that table sets out the Assembly guidance on Standing Order 112, which was the COVID one, and how the other legislators approach these issues. That might be useful for you. So I'll be seeking agreement from yourselves that while the committee will identify its preferred approach to each of these issues at this meeting, the position will not be finalised until the response from the Speaker and the others is received and considered together with any other responses. All right? So we're just getting our sort of thoughts down onto paper for our draft. Once the 24th goes past, we'll see what everybody else says, and then we can move on with that. So the first set of issues relate to the notification by the MLA who intends to take parental leave and wishes to avail of the proxy vote. So members, I'm seeking your views on each of the following. That the MLA wanting to avail of the proxy vote for parental leave in plenary must notify the Speaker. I'm happy with that? Yeah. Yeah. Asking you to note the guide.
Was it not the business committee before rather than the Speaker's office?
Yes, but it was the Speaker was notified via the business office. Remember, there was a proxy vote.
In method then, some method.
I think so. Well, we'll get to that, but I think that as well. Yes.
As in, so the procedure would be that the member. I mean, I suppose just as a matter of individual MLAs are more used to emailing the business office generically about a whole load of things. So that might just be a more straightforward way of doing it for them, rather, because then it wouldn't necessarily always. I as an individual MLA couldn't I don't email the Speaker's office that often.
Yeah. The Standing Order 112 that we had the last time states that a member who wishes to vote by proxy must give notice in writing to the Speaker.
Speaker, yeah.
The last time we had proxy voting at business, whatever it was.
Yes, that's right, yeah.
So it was done that way. The notice under the paragraph 3 must contain the name of the member who wishes to exercise the proxy vote, the identity of the member who will vote on behalf of the person who's going to be off, and confirmation that the proxy voter, is willing to vote on behalf of the person submitting, and the details for the period for which the proxy vote will vote on behalf of somebody.
So is it implicit then that an email to the business office is effectively notifying the speaker? No.
I think that we'll need to confirm that with the speaker's arrangements.
The next one down.
Yes, so well, first of all, we'll get this one first. Are we happy then that, as with 112, that it has to be submitted, wherever it's going to, by 9:30 on the day of business? It can be submitted prior to that, it's just the latest that it can be submitted is 9:30 on the day of business.
Can I just, I mean, I suppose, I think, is the position that we are, because we're obviously, what we're saying is that this is for, I should say, I mean, that could be, for example, someone who's pregnant will know, broadly speaking, the month in which they're going to need to avail of proxy voting. So they'll probably, I'm not saying that's not in everybody's case, there'll be some, the whole point of this is that there's flexibility built in, so that if that parent, mother but also father, decides after 2 months, I'm going to come back in person for a while, or after 6 months, but then needs the flexibility for, we're giving them the flexibility for
We'll
a period
discuss
after.
that later. We're just talking now about submitting.
Just needs submission. The only thing I was going to suggest is, do we, but this might not be for now, it might be whether we decide that a specific form is necessary, or do we just think an email suffices? I mean, that was, I guess, we did the last time.
The last time an email sufficed. We will. We'll have to ask the speaker, because we're actually going to be asking the speaker to put this in process, so it'll be the speaker's decision finally how he or she will want to receive. What we're proposing is that it'll be by email by no later than 9:30, and that email has to contain certain pieces of information.
Okay, I suppose my only is, I mean, I don't agree, sorry, I thought they were going to come in, Danny wants to come in, is about the, because we had that system pertained particularly for COVID, and that flexibility was useful. It's not that it shouldn't be flexible, it's just, I suppose, I'm wondering whether, I mean, bluntly, on behalf of certain party groups who will need to, have to lead a group, but I'm not a whip, but like, where you're sometimes having to, you have to manage your own resources, and parties will want to make sure they have, so I just wonder if do we need to create, I suppose it is a slight additional burden, but it's a form. You know, for example, if you want to do a matter of the day, you have to put in a form. It's not just an email. So it's just something to consider. But to
be honest, the speaker could come back and say that he wants a form. You know, but we'll take the lead on that.
Just to support Matthew in that, he may. But if we suggest that, do we front load that? I think that's actually cleaner. Because it means we're all doing the exact same process. I'm
going to say one thing to you. Yeah. This is supposed to be flexible. For anybody that has a premature baby, will not like the thank of you making them fill out a form and they're maybe in hospital.
Yeah, no, indeed. And that's, I suppose, what I'm... but I suppose the only kind of question I'm asking is because part of our thinking possibly has to be, you know, the fact that we're all in party groups. I think everybody in this committee is, and so you're kind of... There is a making the process work for party groups as well. The process is making it ultimately for parents, but also for the party groups. So it might be that having that particular bit of process is almost a bit of security, or it's a process built in. Do you see what I mean? I'm trying to say. So it's just so that there's. I'm not suggesting it. I'm not saying it. This definitely has to happen. It's just I guess. Is there any difficulty with simply?
We'll go through it one at a time. So the members. I'm sorry, Danny. You wanted to come in. Apologies, Danny.
I've lost Sinead, I think.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's just one point of clarification, just on the confirmation bit. Can you hear me? Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. How do I confirm that the person agrees to be my proxy?
Okay. We'll come to that in a wee moment or two. So I just take it back to, so the guidance for the Standing Order 112, which is what we used during COVID, states the entitlement to a proxy vote and to its use is personal to the member. A member or a party may not cast the votes of members for their party in absence of notification to the Speaker from the individual members. So, and that's the same in all other legislatures. So a party can't presume to take the proxy, the person has to do that. So it's the way that they're going to do that. We're proposing that it would be an email, but I'm hearing from some that you would prefer a form to be available.
It's not that I'm going to say preferred, it's almost just that I want us to slightly discuss whether just having an email creates a situation in which for party, and I think it's something that whips might want to consider. The scenario I'm thinking of is say you have a group, and this might be a group that's a bit smaller than some of the other bigger groups, where you have someone who is availing of this right. And now this is in a sense an internal question for parties to manage their groups, but it could well be that someone theoretically, and I'm not so much thinking, Kelly, of the situation where someone is about to have a baby, because you would imagine in any normal, of course they would have spoken to their group, and their colleagues will know that they are about to become parents. But I'm thinking about 6 months, 8 months down the line, perhaps say the person has, and this is exactly why I think a significant period up to a year is a good idea, is saying, well, look, I need a bit longer proxy voting because I've got a particular childcare challenge at the minute, or whatever it is in the first year. Are you creating a slight challenge, or are you, if that person is able to avail of it at very short notice at 9:25 on the morning of business, does the group need to have a bit more, do we need to have a bit more structure essentially on behalf of party groups to say...
So this isn't for childcare. This is only proxy voting for maternity, paternity, for the list.
Yes.
So
yeah.
when we get to the stage when we talk about the length of time,
Yeah.
the person can come back before that,
Yeah.
but it will be presumed that the full time that they will have the proxy held for them.
Fine. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
We'll leave it
So
for now then.
It might
But
be.
see another point in terms of the appointed person. So using your example, Chair,
Yes.
if someone goes into labour this morning, as you say, it's the last thing in their mind to get, whether a form or an email,
Yeah.
but it also will be more difficult for them actually to get an appointed person. I actually think the appointed person, most probably in all of the party perspectives, should be whips.
Maybe,
Because
yeah.
the person will have already that planned that
Yeah.
the whip will have my proxy if I put the form in.
I don't think that we should be putting an imposition on who will do it. It may well be parties will agree that, but as far as standing order is concerned,
Well, I
the
thought that's what happened the
person,
last time.
because last time there was a limitation on the number of people who could be in the assembly chamber, so the way it worked was it was whips or another appointed person by the party carried the votes for everyone, because at that stage we were only allowed 22 people. This is different. This will be a person is carrying somebody else's proxy vote because of a reason that they're off. I think that what would make this safer for everyone is if it's by email, that so the person will be saying in their email, say, or the form, the name of the member wishing to seek to use the proxy, and they will already know in standing orders what the proxy is for, the start and end date of the absence, the name of the member who has agreed to act as proxy. I would imagine that if it was an email, you'd be copying the person who's agreed to act as proxy to that, and it may be then for parties to say that their whip is included in that proxy.
Just for anybody who wants to know, the Standing Order 112, the actual standing order and the guidance that was issued alongside it is at page 83 of your pack. So you can see what the previous one did. Now, it was designed for during COVID times, as you've said, so not everything, you know, it may reflect the circumstances of COVID rather than the circumstances of parental leave, but it's there for you if you want to look at it.
Okay, thanks.
I just say, Chair, I think that it should be the whip, and that then, given that we say the whip is representative of a party, that for those that are independent, that they then are facilitated and been able to nominate.
Can't name whip in standing orders because not everybody has a whip.
Yeah.
But that's my point is that you can say the whip for those that have a party.
I don't think we need to detail that. I was whip and I had to transfer the vote if I was sick. You know, so I think we leave it that the person will nominate a proxy person on their behalf. The parties can decide if that's whip or not.
I agree.
I think we need to leave that a wee bit more. The person, whoever it is that's carrying the vote for, the person is carrying their vote, not a party vote.
Yeah, because you're designing the standing orders for all members, and not all members
Have a whip or
have
have a party.
bigger parties or have whips. So, and I think when it's in place anyway, the parties work to their own structures and will have their own systems in place. I think it might be more difficult if you start trying to
Define it.
yeah.
So then we'll end up excluding somebody.
Yeah.
You know, for instance, Claire Sugden or Jerry Carroll or Jim Allister, they would probably be their own whip, to be honest. You know, or Alex Easton, sorry. So I think we don't, in standing orders, need to do that, but party can certainly have an internal
Yes.
agreement that that's how it would work. Yeah. Yeah, but just to seek this then, so could be email, it could be a form. There was certainly a form available for Standing Order 112 the last time, and it was great because the business office could then provide the proxy, the person who held the proxy, with the list of names of the ones that they were voting for, which was very useful for going through the voting lobbies. But this may only be for 2 or 3 people. So, yeah. The last time I know that there was an email that was created. The Speaker will decide this, whether it goes to the Speaker's office or to proxy voting at, or to a nominated person in the business office on their behalf. So the details of when because we'll have in guidance the length of the time the person will be able to fill that out to say, I'm leaving on, or the proxy voting will start on whatever date, and it's due to end by a date, as outlined in the guidance. We'll talk about that in a minute. They don't have to spend that whole time. But I think I just would like to get your views. People can obviously put this in a lot earlier, but can we agree then that the notification is sent no later than 9:30 a.m. on the sitting day that the member intended to exercise their proxy?
Taking your point earlier, why does the time matter?
It's just so the business office and the Speaker can confirm and make sure that any voting for that day, if it's that late of notice, that they have time.
Yeah, but you're only talking about, I don't know who anybody's maternity leave at the minute, but I thought it's a small number at any one time. And if you take someone who went early,
And if it's after 9:30, then their
lost their
votes
vote.
are lost that
If
day.
we're accommodating them, why not just accommodate them?
I think it's just because of the arrangements for the business office.
Every other legislator has a cut-off date time.
Your wrongs don't make your right, Stella.
Yeah.
Later on, when we'll talk about when a vote is cast, how it's notified that it was done by proxy. So it's to give that time. But if you guys think that we shouldn't have a cut-off on it,
I'm not sure we should. Whenever somebody decides they're entering the world, they're not driven by the clock.
yeah. So we will have people who will be able to notify in advance.
Yeah.
There may be people who can't, for whatever reason, notify in advance. It could be the foster one, so it's very late notice, or it could be a premature baby, it could be anything like that. So rather than getting into the details, so we're saying
The foster one's actually probably a better example, Chair.
Yeah. To notification, we're not saying is to be sent no later than 9:30 a.m. We just say that the notification is sent. To be honest, I think that the Speaker's office is going to come back and say if it's after a certain time, then it's going to cause problems for them to be able to accept the proxy voter. Yeah.
Not sure why. It just shows their inflexibility.
Yeah.
Sorry, Michael.
I think there may be practical. I think maybe we need to ask. Why did the business office or why did the Speaker the last time have the 9:30 cut off? Didn't really. It happened once, to be honest, because we were voting on behalf of everybody for COVID. It might be worth it. Robbie and then Danny. Sorry, you have your hands up.
Thank you, Chair. And I don't know, hopefully I've picked up most of this. I think the comfort for this, or maybe something that can be written into it, is that the 9:30 on that morning is not the target, and good practice would be that it's indicated as early as possible. And that's just the key of it, but you've raised a couple of good points there. These things happen without warning at times, with the best of intentions. We would be, if we put further barriers in, what we're doing is those people who would be in a crisis moment actually is the people who would suffer. But I think if we put something in that say 9:30 on a Monday morning, it isn't best, but it's and shouldn't be seen as a target, but it is the absolute minimum.
Okay, Dana, you want to come in?
Yeah, certainly I would agree with Robbie. I think there has to be some sort of notice, but I'm willing to hear, if why the notice would need to be agreed. I would assume that the Speaker's office would need to be notified by a certain time, and the business office would need to be notified by a certain time, so that they know that there is a proxy vote happening. But I'd be interested in just hearing what length of notice they would require for that to happen. Thank you, Chair.
The other thing that we could, Stella's just raised there, this is our proposals of what the Speaker can consider for the guidance, so we could leave it at the Speaker's discretion. let Edwin decide. He may well come back and say it's 9:30, the same as the COVID one.
You could, but it does seem inflexible at 9:30 for a 12 o'clock start on a Monday.
Would you be happy for it to happen during a vote?
I actually would have no issue, because the purpose of it is, I mean, back to Robbie's examples earlier in terms of the emergency, in terms of foster care. If something happens and you're on the list, you can't say no. The child's placed with you. It happens.
Sorry, I think that brings it back to the issue of having the option of being able to send an email, even if it's an emergency, throughout the night, you know, and as opposed to having to get a form and send a form in. It's in those emergency situations, I think you could meet the 9:30 deadline if something happened the previous 24 hours that you weren't expecting.
On this one here, remember it's Monday or Tuesday. If you're already planning to be off, unless it's an emergency, you know, it's going to be able to get it in before 9:30 on a Monday or Tuesday. It's for those emergency ones, you know, and that's when you go, a vote, email, that's it, done. But we could put in, rather than tying it to 9:30, that the Speaker's discretion. What do you think? Take a view on that from everybody.
No.
Not the Speaker's
I think it needs to
discretion.
be a time. Sorry, Chair, for putting in, but no, I think it needs to be a time one.
You want a time one, Robbie? So you're
I
saying
do.
9:30 on day of.
On the day, yeah, that it first applies.
Okay. So we've two on the table here: Speaker's discretion or 9:30 on the day that it applies. So just go. It's not really a vote unless you want to have a vote. We'll just go around the room. Who wants the Speaker's discretion?
Yeah.
Trevor.
Sorry,
Anybody
Chair.
else? Danny, Trevor. And then what about the 9:30 on the day that it starts, Monday or Tuesday? Anybody else think on that one?
I sorry to be difficult, but I reserve my position for the time being on that. That's okay. I can see arguments on both sides.
Yeah. Danny, you have your hand up.
Yes, Chair. Chair, can we hear a little bit more about why notice is required? I can kind of see both sides, but is there a specific reason why notice would be required?
It's so that if we are going to, well, we'll get on to it, but if we're going to have proxy voting recorded for a vote, for instance, if so we don't have a deadline and we go into plenary session at 10:30 on a Tuesday, and the fourth item of business, 11:30 say, is something that requires a vote. So I walk into the lobby and I say I'm voting on behalf of Orlea.
Yeah.
Nobody knows. I could just have run and past the business offices. By the way, I'm voting for Orlea today.
I think it's what I want to say, as a principle, like, it's really important that we within certain structures, we can be as flexible as we can be and make it available. It's also important to say that, like, putting deadlines in and putting these structures in will not prevent. It might mean, in the worst case scenario, that a person availing of this misses a vote, but it doesn't mean they're going to be compelled to come in and vote. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have some structure, then while there is the potential that if the person hasn't, a theoretical potential, the person isn't able to notify in some way or other, there's also the potential that, as you say, Kelly, you could have I don't think there's a potential, but I think people would genuinely abuse or misuse the system. Certainly not the actual parents, but just in terms of the practicalities of people. Oh, well, I've got Robbie's vote or whatever. I've got Orlahe's vote, and anyway. So but I personally would like a wee bit more time to just consider that with my party. And
I think that. Folks, this is not final decision today as well. This is just us getting our considerations together so that we can get that into a draft to the Speaker of guidance that could potentially be taken forward for this. Robbie and Danny, use your hands up again. Robbie, do you want to come in again?
Thank you, Chair. As someone who operated the proxy vote and carried quite a few at times, we will be creating standing orders here, and we have to bear in mind the needs and pressures that are on members to be in debates on chambers, reading the packs, scrutinising bills, speaking, and then also carrying the proxy for the other person. So whilst we're considering the standing order very much in the mind of the person who will require a proxy to be given, we also have to bear in mind when we're building this that there are other people impacted. So there's the person who will carry the proxy, and that's a big responsibility, particularly if you have to go down a lobby which isn't the lobby that you're going down, you have to remember also to activate that proxy, and it's quite easy to forget to do it in the nature of the day. So that's why I think it's useful that it's not an ad hoc, just short, notice thing. And also the business committee and the operations that are there, Chair, which you've spoke to a little bit. But what in terms of spirit of cooperation, I think the time needs to be in there, but there may be a caveat here which says so it should be by 9:30 on the day that it happens, but in extreme circumstances, which would recognise, and this would be in extreme circumstances, and extreme circumstances wouldn't be anything much that we've talked about today, but without thinking too much of the scenarios, but in extreme circumstances, it may be at the behest of the Speaker, but I'm still minded that there are other areas that this impacts on, not just the person who needs the proxy done, but also the person who carries the proxy, and their workload, and the business committee, and all of the functions that happen.
So I think Robbie made a really good point, which is the scenario in which, because most of us, because we're all in party groups of differing sizes, but we are all in party groups with numbers of MLAs, and our assumption is that it will be a whip or a named person. But in a situation in which you have extreme flexibility around the time of the notification, that could be someone who's an independent, and they could be someone who is, you're giving your vote to someone of not just a different party, but a different designation. You could be a unionist or nationalist availing of this and giving it to another, or not to make everything about designation, but that so it is likely that the person doing the proxy voting would be walking through, could be from a different, it could be someone who's on the left, another person who's on the right who they're voting for. They could be walking through a different lobby routinely, so for that person, as Robbie says, they'll need to get their head into the space that I'm for the sake of argument, I'm voting no against the budget, but I'm an executive MLA, I'm in an executive party, and I'm voting yes for the budget, but I've got to remember that I've got to vote no for this. So I think that we do need to think about it from that person's perspective too, because they'll have to have it in there. So, because this has to work as well for people who are independents and single members.
Annie.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, just to go back to the scenario you mentioned, where somebody hasn't notified at all, so that if there's no time frame, somebody hasn't notified and a vote is called, and then somebody arrives saying, I am that person's proxy, how does that get recorded anywhere?
It won't be, to be honest. I think this is where it would be right for if there's no proxy registered, then if I was the person standing at the top in the telling booth, I would be going, I'm sorry, but I don't have any notification that you can vote on behalf of X, Y and Z. But I tell you what we can do in this, folks. I think that we make life easier for ourselves. We can include both options, Speaker's discretion and the 9:30 cut-off on the day of plenary, and put that into guidance and let the Speaker make a comment on that, because the Speaker will be the one that knows the timescales that the business office requires and the voting lobbies require. And I think that, to be honest, we could be presuming here something that we can't do.
Speaker's discretion on...
Speaker's discretion, or what we have is the 9:30 on the sitting day, the member intended to exercise their proxy. Put both in, and then the Speaker can confirm what the operational issues are for that.
Of course, couldn't the Speaker then...
Sorry, Chair, I had my hand up
Sorry.
quite a while ago.
Sorry, I didn't see it.
I think that maybe the clerk had advised you that, no?
Go on ahead.
No, just I was getting a wee bit frustrated there now, listening to the discussion, and I'm pretending more to the idea that it is 9:30, that should be the cut-off, given just even the complexities of what could arise in the event of not having a cut-off time on the day of the actual vote itself.
That's the one that we had sort of talked about before, so it's 9:30 on the day of plenary. I think what we could also put into guidance is to say that it's preferable for the person to be able to notify as early as possible, but at latest the 9:30 on the day of plenary. But for those who want that flexibility...
9:30, I go with that. I mean, I don't plan to have any children. It's not going to affect me. But I mean, the whole purpose of this was flexibility, and now we're removing flexibility. But I'm happy to go with the majority in that, because I'm not planning to go on paternity leave anytime soon.
Okay.
We're going to ask the business office also for the practical reasons for the 9:30. Yeah. And even if you kept the 9:30, you could also, I think as Matthew said, put in extreme circumstances, the Speaker's discretion.
Okay.
Something like that.
So I'm just going to address. I do think that structure is important. But as Trevor said, if it's about flexibility, you could do 9:30, as I think we're getting to, with discretion. I mean, because there will be extreme circumstances that you don't want to, where the Speaker can apply discretion as he does.
But Matthew, sorry, through the chair, I actually disagree.
Right.
Because I don't. How do you give someone discretion on a case like this? It's either for everyone or it's for no one, and it's either 9:30 or it's not. And if you're saying so what does the Speaker do? Does he like you and give you discretion, but doesn't like Melissa and doesn't give him the discretion? I think you're either sticking to time or you're not.
Well, to the chair again, you could get the Speaker's comments on it, whether he thinks he wants to be in that position, as you say, if he thinks that's too much.
I think what we'll do is we'll write this up and we'll let the Speaker confirm. I think we do need to know for everybody why the 9:30 was used before. We can get that back. Sure, we can get that. Yeah, it may confirm that the 9:30 is reasonable and is required. But we can get a comment back from the Speaker on that one if you wish. Danny, you have your hand up.
Thanks, Chair. Just to follow on what I was saying previously, can I just get it confirmed that the scenario where somebody arrives with no notification having been given for a vote, that they will not be able to act as a proxy? There must be notification before a vote takes place.
That's what we will be putting in standing orders. Is that there's the standing orders will say that there's proxy voting available for maternity and paternity leave and all of that list. But if that leave hasn't been notified, to be honest,
Prison standing orders.
yeah.
I mean, if it's helpful, Danny, the way it worked before under the COVID emergency standing orders was if a member arrived to cast a proxy vote, the clerks doing the voting lobbies had the list of who had proxy votes, and if that member was trying to cast a vote for somebody else that wasn't on the clerk's voting list, then they would have queried it and wouldn't have taken that vote. So there was lists provided beforehand.
Sorry, just to follow up on that.
Pardon?
Yep. Sorry, just to follow up on that. That makes perfect sense. In the event of the Speaker's discretion, how would that be recorded?
It's nothing to do with what it's whether a proxy is allowed to be used for it. So it'll be notified on the official register, which we'll talk about later.
Okay, thank you.
Because that's not called out in the chamber. Vote's a vote in the chamber. Yeah. So we've already spoken about members about that. So we'll include that flexibility part in that, but the 9:30 will be there as well. So the notification that goes forward, whether it's an email or on a form, it's the name of the member seeking to use the proxy vote, the start and end date of the absence, the name of the member who has agreed to act as proxy. Can I just double check if the email is going in, is it enough that the person who has agreed to act as proxy is copied in to that email, or do they need to go and email the
No.
or to sign the form?
I think once the person fills the form in and signs it, that's their nominated person. I think we have to accept it. We're starting to complicate it again.
I agree. So on that basis, then we just take it as read that if somebody puts down a person on their form or in their email that's agreed that that's who the proxy is, they will have spoken to the person beforehand. We might want to put that in guidance just to say that the person needs to confirm with their appointed proxy that they're content to do so before they submit. Yeah. For the Standing Order 112, the COVID one, the member nominated as proxy did not formally have to agree to the nomination before it's accepted by the Speaker, so that would run along with that one. So are you content with what we've talked about so far? So now I want to talk about the publishing, as Danny has brought up, about the proxy voting arrangements. For Standing Order 112, the proxy voting arrangements were published in the minutes of proceedings and in the official record. Are we happy that that sort of thing happens again? Yeah?
Does that mean that it will make clear that the person has voted by proxy rather than in person?
Yes.
Okay.
That's it. The next set of issues relate to the duration and definition of proxy voting. So the duration of the period. So the Shannon agreed that it's 7 months in total, with a maximum of 4 weeks before the due date, adoption date or surrogacy date, and a maximum of 6 months after. The House of Commons takes a similar approach. No duration is mentioned in the Scottish guidance. So I'm going to seek your views on that. For my starter for 10 is, I don't think that MLA should qualify for anything more or less than what's provided for in employment legislation, which is 9 months paid and then there's 3 months unpaid. So it'd be up to, that's my starter for 10. I think that we should give that flexibility there, that it could be up to 52 weeks. But I'm happy to seek everyone else's opinion on that.
I'll just make a comment. I mean, in terms of duration, I think I pretty much agree with that. I suppose the only question is if we are there to delicately, if we're saying that it should mirror employment law with the 6 paid, 3 or 9 paid, 3 unpaid.
Sorry, I just meant on leave terms as opposed to the pay stuff, because that's out of our control.
Indeed, but I suppose there will then, if we're publicly saying that the reason we're doing this mirror employment, I can imagine members of the public, certainly probably people in the media, saying, asking other questions about what are they being paid for the.
Well, if that was in any control of MLAs, we could have an answer to that, but we don't. It'll be an independent panel.
I think it's worth this. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
I'm sort of with Matthew, and it's particularly stretched out to 12 months.
It's not, as I just said, through the chair, it's not that I think we shouldn't, just 12 months, it's just, they should be aware that people, if we are saying that the reason we are aligning it is to parallel or to mirror this, then people will say, well, if you're mirroring it, then surely you should mirror it in terms. But but that's not, as you say, that's not within the framework of this committee. But I just think we should be cognizant that people, I'd imagine certainly others will, so we should be careful. But I think.
I know that we've got the comparison, and we got those in the papers about the 4 weeks before and the 6 weeks after. Because I'm in contact with the Scottish Government, people from the Scottish Government, the reason why they didn't put any duration is because they were planning to, and then the employment legislation changed. Right. So they just went, no, we're just not putting that in. And they reflect in a more relaxed way what happens elsewhere. And it's also, you don't have to take full time. But it's just to get members. We'll go with the flow on this one. I've started for 10, and anybody else have any thoughts on how long? Maybe is it 9 months or stick to the 7 months?
Yeah, was there not something? Am I imagining there was another provision that was being considered for MLAs, particularly maternity, for like stand-ins? Was there not some?
Not for this. This is proxy just.
No, I get that, but I'm trying to get my head round. If they have a stand-in, then clearly the proxy wouldn't apply.
Yes. But we don't have that arrangements here.
And was that been looked at? Or am I imagining things?
We haven't looked at it for this because we were just, from all of the reports, it was just proxy voting.
I understand for this, but I know we haven't looked at it. But what was there? Is it on somewhere? Did I read somewhere?
No, I think there was. Someone was undertaking a review around maternity pay and conditions and leave within the Assembly. Trying to think, was it the Commission, the Assembly Commission? But I think that was more to do with.
The only time it's been mentioned for this committee was the Westminster Framework, or Westminster, whatever that committee's called. They asked for everything. They wanted stand-ins, they wanted proxy voted, they wanted everything because of the situation that they would meet in all summer. Mm-hmm. But in any of our reports, we don't have anything for stand-ins for the Assembly. So we don't have a copy of whatever that report is.
I think it was the Assembly Commission in the last mandate was looking into the conditions around maternity leave and maternity pay, but it's separate to proxy voting. Do you know what I mean? I think it was just around the.
But everybody's been asked for their feedback and they haven't provided it. We've looked at all the legacy reports as well.
But I mean, Orla's right, isn't Orla?
Yeah, Orla, don't worry.
Orla's right.
The Assembly Commission can't look at that because it's an independent panel.
Okay.
The Assembly Commission now. So.
But it's an independent panel, does pay anyway.
Yes, well maybe it was that panel, but I just know that it was referenced in the Assembly chamber at some point that it was being looked into, but it's separate obviously from the proxy voting. Yeah. So see, in terms of what we're setting as proxy voting, I mean, we don't even need to be, we're not part of pay and conditions. This is just proxy voting that we're dealing with in the standing order.
Just the length of time.
So I think on that basis, the length of time, and I obviously Matthew's point around, if you're given the 12 months and the public will compare to what the statutory maternity leave and pay is, but I don't even think we need to be getting into pay. This is just how long you will need for your period of leave for your proxy vote. So I think that, you know, taking even the employment law out of it, the 9 months, 12 months is fine. You know, it's just how long you want your proxy vote. It's nothing to do with your pay.
Nothing to do with pay.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's also worth saying that, worth reminding that because the proxy, this is flexible from day one, and it says nothing about people's constituency responsibilities or even their
proxy vote.
Committee membership. So I think it's important that we make that clear as we're communicating this. This doesn't imply that the person is, you know, because candidly we don't provide, and we are not in a position to provide. So all of us have to effectively manage constituency offices, and most of us have spokespersonships and committee assignments. We are not providing like all of that. We can't. The Procedures Committee cannot provide this leave. So I think we need to be careful about that. That's the kind of point I'm making. So the public perception is not that this is a form of paternity leave or maternity leave. I mean, it's obviously it is that in one sense, but it's not in total, because we can't. So I think it's just important we draw that contrast.
Yeah. Standing orders doesn't really deal with constituency matters at all.
No, it doesn't. But I just think that the principle is an important one, that because the nature of our employment is not. None of us have annual leave for a start, so we do So I just.
I suppose in terms of the guidance, some explanatory parts. Yes. In terms of that, I think draws that out, because I suppose we can point to that we took consideration of those points. I agree with Matthew. That's twice today, but yeah.
No, you'll need to have a lie down after this try.
So let's go back to it. So we have on the table what other places do, which is 4 weeks before the due date and 6 months after. No harm, but see, 4 weeks before, I've never thought that was a great idea, because I worked up to the weekend before mine was born, because I wanted the 3 months in my day that you got off afterwards. But it's just to get an idea from you guys. Is it the 4 weeks before and 6 months after as the other legislators, or do we have no duration as mentioned in the Scottish guidance, or do we want to put a time scale on that?
Is it beforehand?
Any time before or after?
Beforehand, sometimes there's complications and
there is.
Some people have to go off for medical
we
reasons.
could allow up to 4 weeks
Yeah.
before. I think I can't remember. In employment law, is it 11 weeks before? But that's tied in.
I mean, through the chair, if I may. I think actually Danny was before me, so I don't want to be hogging.
Sorry, Danny, go on ahead.
Hi, Chair. I just think we should be building as much flexibility into this as possible. Some people do work right up to their date, and obviously want to take as much time of that as possible. So flexibility, I think, would be key here.
No, go ahead. You were.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, again, on this point, this in one sense we have to be careful that this isn't about people working or not working. This is about people voting and the flexibility around voting. So it is perfectly possible that the flexibility might. I mean, because voting can be necessarily antisocial, and it can involve standing around, having a particular flexibility. For example, for a pregnant mother who is at term and may still be working, as in doing constituency and policy work, but that is, I think, a good flexibility to have, because if you're 9 months pregnant, hanging about to 2 a.m. to vote on amendments, particularly if you have to be up at 8 or 9 o'clock, you're going to be in the office at 8 or 9 o'clock. So I think that flexibility is a good thing, but I just think it's important that we draw the distinction that this isn't working, this is voting, because we have no control over whether people are working or not.
Do we want to give flexibility then that there can be up to a maximum of 4 weeks before somebody can register for proxy vote?
I want to make a point.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Are you sure?
Yes, of course.
Whatever the period is, you talked about it 4 weeks before and 6 months after they talked about it, which is 7 months.
Yeah.
So could we say then a 7 month period, but not more than 4 weeks before?
Yeah.
That's saying it's not necessarily, if you don't use your 4 weeks, you get it at the other end anyhow.
Yes, the Seanad and the House of Commons don't seem to offer it after. It's not a block of 7 months, it's 4 and 6.
Yeah. Whereas you could disadvantage someone who works right up to the day before versus the person who's been off earlier. So if we take the 7 months, but not before, and could say, but not any more than 4 weeks before, and up to whatever weeks it is behind.
Well, it says the Shannon says it is 7 months in total with a maximum of 4 weeks before.
Yeah, that's perfect.
So,
Yeah, that's perfect.
okay.
But the Scottish model doesn't, and I don't know, I'm just wondering, but does that in itself just allow for the flexibility? I mean, because it's the point that Matthew said, we're not setting people's working terms and conditions or pay. This is just in terms of being allowed a proxy vote while you're off having a baby or fostering a child or whatever. So I don't even know if we need to or if we should be getting into the specifics of how many weeks before or how many months after. I think if you're going to have a baby as a mother or a father, at your discretion you will know what period you will need to utilise the proxy voting. And then again, it's the emergency situations. You don't know if you have a premature baby. My baby was 7 weeks early, so that 4 week period I would have missed out. So I just don't even know if we need to define. But that's just my view, And
sorry.
I'm actually of the same opinion that I don't think it should be definitive either. Given just even the complications that can arise even a long time after, for mothers and the likes of it in particular, so I don't see why we should be definitive one way or the other.
So, in order to get something into the draft, are we saying then that we want to replicate the Scottish guidance model, which is no duration?
I don't think we need to define it, but that's just my opinion.
Putting my 2 pence worth in, the Scottish guidance model is handy because, like I say, no more and no less than anybody else who's out there who's working gets off or has that sort of allowances. The Scottish one gives you that flexibility.
What's the Scottish one again?
No duration.
Doesn't set a duration.
Doesn't mention it. Silent.
They just say you're putting in your proxy for maternity or paternity leave and get on with it.
I know we're not talking about employment and pay, but it is a condition that other people wouldn't enjoy in other places, let's put it like that. So
That's
we need
why
to be careful we don't make
more,
this
no less.
gold-plated here.
Yeah.
So I'm not down in the ditch again about the timing of it, but I think there should be a maximum time period and that should be notified.
And Scotland doesn't do that. It just
They
doesn't
don't,
have a
but
duration.
we need to be careful that, I mean, there's other people in other places who work who don't enjoy the same benefits, and this is an additional benefit that we're going to pass on, which I agree with the purpose of it. I mean, but I think we need to be careful we don't leave it entirely open-ended.
That was my thoughts about no more, no less. You know, it was the 52 weeks because anybody else out there could have
Yes.
up to 52 weeks.
But again, it's just the point of this isn't about leave. You know, as Matthew was saying, you could be in your constituency office or your committees. We're not defining any of this. This is just about an actual proxy vote.
Yeah.
You know, it's nothing to do with our work or our roles. This isn't us telling the public we're taking X amount of time of parental
Yes.
leave. This isn't parental leave. This is just us having the option to have a proxy vote
Yeah.
in the instance of parental leave.
So we'll go, are we then?
But I know what you mean about public perception too. How do you...
It's a special treatment that others do not enjoy.
Devil's advocate. They don't have to stand voting on a budget at 1 o'clock in the morning.
I don't really want to either, to be honest, but I had Robbie there and then
Right, Robbie and Danny. Robbie first.
Thank you, Chair. Listen, all really, really good points, and we do need to talk about them all, but I suppose the principle of this is based on the fact that it comes from birth. So the parental leave definition kind of comes in around birth, but why we did so? If there's no end limit to it, then you'd be discriminating technically against anybody who's a parent. Yep. Because raising a child brings difficulties right through the duration that you have that child before they get wings and go live their own lives and do whatever. So I think we just need to be careful here that the premise that this was, I imagine that it came forward on this parental piece is in and around birth. If it's not, that's fine. If we're just looking at a parental thing that impacts on all parents, then we're in a different territory. And then the other thing that we need to be careful of here is when we define this, when we go to do the second phase of this, which is illness and other matters, then whatever we decide in this will inform what we do there, I would imagine. And listen, I'm happy to have the discussion on this, because my ears are definitely open. But if it's a parental thing, then we can't just hone in on at birth, because you could have difficulties with the child can or that negotiation in your family can happen at any stage when you have them then. And it can't be just there just for to be honest, it can't just be there for the babysitting piece either. So we just need to have good sound rationale as to why we would leave it open-ended, I think. Not against it, but we need sound rationale.
Just to be clear, this one is on and about birth, because we're not looking at this stage about carers and parental responsibilities beyond that. That's something else that could be further down the road. Yeah.
That being the case, Chair, then I think there probably needs to be a time on it, if that's the case, because then you would definitely be in danger of discriminating against parents. So, and then if we leave it open-ended at the other side, it might be the right thing to do, by the way. But if this is purely about birth and that type of stuff, I mean, then we set the standard for the parental piece, which will be unlimited too. And if that's where we go, that's fine, by the way. It's just to understand what we will do with this in the longer term. What we said at this point will dictate what we do very much. I know we'll go into the assembly and debate this, and there'll be other points that will be teased out by the members, which is good too. But at the same time, this committee needs to be where it sets the standard for this now. Will very much be used in the debate to fashion the second and third phases, if we get to that.
Okay. Danny?
Thank you, Chair. Chair, yeah, I disagree with the point that it's special treatment. I don't think it is special treatment at all. This is not about leave, and it's not about getting pay. It's very, very specific to the job of voting on legislation. And it's important that those votes, are able to be made, and that your will is able to be expressed. So I don't think it's a special treatment that people in other jobs are losing out on. It's very specific to this role. But absolutely, I do think we need to be as flexible as possible about that.
I think we're getting to the stage now where we need to know what we want to put into these draft. It's not the final one, just to remind everybody. So are we saying, sorry, Robbie, go on ahead.
Sorry, I don't think I've disagreed with Danny Donnelly too much since he's ever become an MLA, but this is different, because in reality, when we had Starleaf, you were able to join the debate in the chamber, as I did during COVID, but we don't have Starleaf and we don't have Zoom in the chamber. So in essence, it's not just the proxy vote, guys, on a Monday and a Tuesday. The reality is you will not be in the debate, and most likely you will not be in the building. The reason you need the proxy vote is because you will not be in the building, so you will not be part of the debates, you'll not be listening. And yes, you proxy your vote, and I get the nature of that, but the extension of why you need to proxy your vote means you will not be in the chamber, you will not be in your normal workplace. If we had Starleaf, Danny, and you could do your Zoom and take part in the debates in the chamber, I would totally agree with you. But this is proxy voting, but by given proxy voting, by extension, you will not be in the chamber and you won't be fulfilling that function in the debates and that. So if we had Starleaf up and go on and the technology allowed for that to be in the chamber, right behind you, but we don't have that, so it's slightly more than just the proxy vote.
And I just remind people that what we're putting is proxy voting in plenary for parental leave.
Mm-hmm. If you take that, Robbie's to its conclusion, Robbie's got grown-up children, he's still a parent, so he could take time off.
Well, we're defining it by what we've said, so it's the parental, it's the maternity, paternity, adoption.
Not if you're open-ended, isn't it? If you don't have a time limit on it.
No, but we'll still have the categories of what it applies for.
Yeah, but then
which is not
Robbie's point's relevant in the discriminatory part, because if it's open-ended for parental leave but not for carers leave,
we don't have carers on this list.
Well, then what's the limit that you talked about there? The ones that's coming on the list.
Yeah, no, I know. So I get what Robbie's saying. So if we set it with no time scales at the minute, because we're just defining maternity and paternity leave. So if someone's going to have a baby, then that's fine, that's okay. But if we bring this forward, then until we have made changes around parental leave and standing orders, then it is unfair to, you know, to parents of older children. I understand that. So I think until maybe we have the conversation around bringing forward standing orders for parental leave, sickness and all the rest, then maybe it makes sense to then set a time scale on it. But then, as Danny was saying, for the sake of flexibility, I think then if we are going to do that, it needs to be as broad as we can set it. And again, I'm just saying that from the point of view of, to me, 4 weeks prior to a birth doesn't cut it for, you know, certain circumstances.
The list, just for ourselves, is on page 65 of the pack. It says that the definition of parental leave will include maternity leave, paternity leave, adoption leave, shared parental leave, fostering and complications arising from pregnancy, including miscarriage and stillbirth.
I think we're at cross purposes, but both Orlia and I are talking about what's the other things we're talking about at a later point. Maybe to help move this forward, go back to and pick up, and particularly Orlia's example in terms of the 7 weeks. What about the 7 months from the date of the first application of proxy? Which then doesn't matter how many weeks it is before the date, the expected date.
Yes, because you put your proxy, you put your...
Once you put your first proxy in, it lasts no longer than 7 months from that date.
That means then you can't put it in advance. Or it's from the date or your proxy is going to apply.
Yes.
Sorry, so when the person's putting their form or their email in, they will say it's going to start on X and go through for a period of time after that. Are we happy that it's 7 months or another length of time? Because 7 months is... And
7 months same as 4 weeks and 6 months.
And they're reviewing.
They're maybe going to shorten it, are they?
No, they're going to go in line with employment law. But the other thing that this also comes back to as well is one of the things, just because we're just about to come on to this, so we can include this now. So say, for instance, somebody has a baby or they're taking their maternity or paternity leave in May, starts then. Does that 7 months then include the recess over the summer or the recess at Christmas?
Yes.
So it's one block. So we all agreed that's the same as anybody would have if they're
It has to be, yeah. I think that's...
It's the length of time. So it means then that if it's over a recess period, we're just saying it's a block of whatever the period of time ends up being. So Trevor said the block starts with the person names their date, and that's the start of the block, whether that's 4 weeks before, 10 weeks before, the day of, that's their block starts. And our block's proposed as 7 months, the same as Wales and Scotland Wales and the House of Commons have, or are we saying the other proposal was the Scottish one where it's open-ended? We could put both in. We could put both in to the draft.
We need to agree on something.
No.
Are we doing this all again?
I could go for a happy compromise of 9 months. So I could between 12 and 7.
I could have that too.
9?
Because
9?
it probably follows.
On timing, I think would always be, although I haven't formally got a full view of my colleagues yet, that maximum is better, but I would be happy to compromise on 9.
And we can review it later, Danny.
Sorry, Chair, just go through that again. Are we following employment, the duration of time that is given in employment law here?
So employment, there's 9 months paid and 3 months not paid. It's nothing to do with pay for us, it's the time that the proxy is going to last. We could follow what is out there for people who are in employment, or we could do what the Seanad or the House of Commons do, which is the 7. We're going to take a slightly different from them because, well, I suppose we're closer to the Seanad. We're saying it's from the date that the person nominates as their proxy starts for a period of time, which could be 7 months.
Is it not better to use the wording to follow employment law, in that if employment law increases, then that we would benefit from that as well, and we wouldn't be kept to a set time period?
Ella has just said something that's lovely, actually, that helps us big time, is that we put the list into standing orders and the guidance, which is not in standing orders but goes alongside it, which can be changed easily.
Yes.
Easier than standing orders. So we could actually put in whatever we think now, and it can be updated as and when a future procedures committee or the Speaker indeed decides to do so. So we're going to go from, I think I've heard it started for 10 on the 9 months one, from the date of proxy for a period of 9 months that is one block that includes recess.
Dissolution.
And dissolution. Now you're... What happens if we're dissolved? Well, we won't be voting.
No, but you could have somebody, the period of dissolution to the period of the Assembly first sitting again would be less than the 7 months normally.
Oh, right. 9 months.
9 months.
Well,
normally.
you're assuming that person's coming back as well.
Yes.
I think, to be honest, we take it as a block of period of time, irrespective of what happens.
Regardless, yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Because if they're elected again and they're back again and it's still within that 9 month period, then I think we still allow that to happen. Yeah. Okay. Woohoo! Now, then the next part is about all other legislators allow them for the member to suspend, amend and end early the duration or change their proxy by notification to the Speaker within the timescales as the original notification. So if it's 9 months, Standing Order 112 allowed members who wished to exercise the proxy vote to allow their proxy to nominate another member to act as the proxy if they were unable to act. So the first thing is, are you happy that the member will be able to suspend, amend, end early the duration or change their proxy by notification to the Speaker again, and that whoever holds the proxy for some reason, if they can't be available to vote, that they're able to nominate another member to act as proxy if they're unable to act? And that happened with the last time during COVID, because I was a proxy voter as a whip and was able to move it on to someone else temporarily. So are you happy enough that we can have a process that's in place that members can suspend, amend, end early duration, and or changing the proxy can be managed?
So suspend or amend? Suspend or what?
Possibility of suspending, amending or ending early the duration, and or changing who the proxy is can be managed.
Just one mind, what's the difference between suspending and ending early? Because what I fear here is you could design something that could say we'll take a few months, we don't want the proxy, but we'll reinitiate that at a later point.
I think this follows along with what happens out in the world of work, where you have keep in touch days. So you could be off on maternity leave, on paternity leave, but you come back to the Assembly for a keep in touch or a day or something like that there.
It would be the suspend, I think, would be the member wants particularly to come in for a specific vote. It's something that they're maybe close to their heart, or they really want to be there for that particular one vote. And that would be where they suspend it for a particular vote. Amending would be, if, as you say, yeah, I'll come in, I'll do 2 months, and then I'll come back in and work for 2 months, and then I'll...
I certainly wouldn't agree with that part.
Right, okay.
But I'm happy with the suspension part.
Okay.
No, I'm happy with the one where they want to come in for their
specific vote.
Yeah. But the overall duration, I think it's still the same because it complicates it.
Mm-hmm.
So members would be happy then that they can suspend and they can end early. So if we have 9 months and they don't want to do the 9 months, they want to come back in after 6 months, or not come back in, but take their own vote back, or that whoever their proxy is, that can be changed if that other proxy cannot act.
It's how the proxy is changed.
Okay.
Standing Order 112 allowed the proxy to nominate another proxy. Do you want to continue with that, or do you want the member who has applied for the proxy the ability to change their proxy?
No, the proxy, whoever the proxy is, should be able to change it, because if the person's in hospital or whatever, they've already transferred it, they've done their piece, they've transferred it to Matthew, but Matthew knows he's unavailable that day, then he can transfer it to another party member. I think the responsibility is on the proxy rather than the...
Yeah, and their vote will be carried forward, whoever does it. So, yeah. So you're happy enough that it follows on then from 112, although we're not saying about amending, which is suspending, ending early, or the proxy can move it on to another person for a temporary basis or even for the rest of the period, I'm sure. Yeah. Okay, the next set of issues then, so we've got that one. So the next set of issues relates to the member who will have the proxy vote. So just want your views on this. Can any MLA act as a proxy? What about principal deputy speakers, deputy speakers, tellers. Are there any specific issues relating to independent MLAs or smaller parties that the committee may want to take account of? I think that it would be unfair to have any of the deputy speakers, including the principal deputy speaker, acting as a proxy because they can't vote. If they've sat in that chair at any time during the debate, then they can't vote themselves, but them going into the it's just awkward. And I know from being a person who did the proxy vote during COVID, if you're a teller, it really makes it difficult because you're supposed to be in that booth to watch what's happening, but how can you do that if you need to go into a different booth to vote a different way for somebody? So we'll agreed then that we'll say that the principal deputy speaker or the deputy speakers and the tellers are out on that one. What about the specific issues relating to independent MLAs or smaller parties? Is there any issues there?
The chair, are we going to set this thing about tellers? Is that going to be in
guidance?
That'll be in guidance. That's fair enough. I mean, I just think that will, and I'm not sure there's any practical way around it. Certainly for some of the smaller parties, I mean, I would say if you have someone who's doing, sometimes, you know, I'm kind of going, you and you are the tellers, and that's a very short notice, and it might be that that person is also is doing proxy voting. So I would be, I think chair, deputy chair, I think you can rule those people out for obvious reasons. The teller thing, I think, is a bit more. I'm not so sure, like so I wonder if you put a bit of flexibility, which is like ordinarily, but that's not like completely prohibited.
Okay.
Because I just think, like, I'm speaking from personal experience, which is that, like, sometimes let's face it, sometimes we're forcing in divisions and things that other people would rather we just kept our bake shut on. But then that means I'm having to go, or what? We're having to say, well, I'm having to pick two MLAs to be tellers. If one of those happens to be a and that would often be the case also with the independents.
Jerry and Jim, Jerry, Carol and Jim may need to be tellers.
We could just take it out then. We'll just let it.
I think you can say ordinarily, but it's not. I think it's
Guidance we could suggest that for the speaker is that it is preferred that tellers are not.
Preferred. I think preferred is fine. I think it's fine. It's a preferred, but as long as it's not a prohibition.
I just wouldn't. I'd just allow it.
Well, maybe, yeah.
So in the guidance, that's from the 112, isn't it? Members are discouraged from authorising deputy speakers to cast their vote. And we can add that, are discouraged from authorising deputy speakers or tellers to cast their vote by proxy, as deputy speakers may not vote on matters where they've already been in chair for part of the debate. With tellers, it could just be the complication of the impartiality.
I don't think that's strong enough. I don't think deputy speakers shouldn't be discouraged. It should be
not allowed to, and discourage tellers?
Discourage tellers,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Discourage tellers, but again, I think it can be a prohibition.
And that would help then with the independents and the smaller parties, yeah.
The prohibition and the deputy speaker.
Yeah.
Exactly, 1 second.
So we'll take them out and then we'll say it's what was that one? Discouraged for the tellers, okay.
Danny wants to come in there, I think, Chair.
Sorry, Danny, go on ahead.
Sorry, Chair. My first time MLA status is probably showing here, but how does that work then? If you are a teller and you're in one lobby and a vote is taking place, do you have to wait until everybody is through and then go through the other lobby then yourself? Is that a manageable situation? Is that...
It's a little bit messy because a teller is supposed to be there in the lobby the whole time to watch what's happening with the process. If they have to, they'll have to probably wait in the lobby that they're in, do all that they have to do there, leave that lobby, go over to the other lobby, carry out the vote of the person, or their vote will already be recorded one way or the other, but they will have to go to that other lobby in front of the other tellers to vote the proxy on behalf of that person.
Not if they opt to go to the no lobby or yes lobby as the teller.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, Matthew's the one that's probably going to be found out by it most. But if he takes his two tellers, and he's got a proxy for a no, then he makes sure one of his tellers is in the no lobby.
Yeah, it just creates, through the chair, it does create this, like it will affect us more than because we are smaller and we're in opposition, so we're forcing more divisions, and so we have to make use of people to be tellers as well as, so it does create a theoretical chance. So I would say, if it's possible to discourage it, because I think it shouldn't be the ideal, and I think parties need to be managed, and that's us, that goes for us as well, that you are actually aware that there are and obviously this isn't going to be happening constantly, but if it could be discouraged but not completely prohibited, it's not ideal, and I think that ideally people who, so I mean, I think the practice should be, if someone knows they're holding a proxy vote, ideally they shouldn't be acting as a teller, but sometimes that'll have to happen.
Yeah, I think the discouragement part is the bit that deals with that then. We don't want any of the speakers involved in it, but we'll discourage tellers, but it's not banned. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Now, what the next thing is, should there be a limit on the number of proxies that any MLA can hold? Do we think the Scottish Parliament proxy can only hold the vote for 2 other elected members? No other legislator has clear guidance on this issue. Do we want to put a number on it, or do we just leave that open?
So,
Leave it open. We had it left open before because basically the whips carried everybody's votes during COVID for reasons that we couldn't have that many people. But to be honest, I can't see, unless there is some special chair somewhere where there's a lot of people are going to be off on maternity or paternity leave, that there'll be more than 1, 2 or 3 people. So we'll just leave that number open then.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
So we'll not. It's no other. So it's the same as the Shannon and the House of Commons. They don't have a limit on that. So can the member decide? We've already done that one. On the members can vote for a specific vote. So we've covered that one off. Any views on what communication there should be between the MLA and their proxy on how they want their proxy exercised to vote? Do we want anything put into guidance on that? The guidance that was provided for Standing Order 112 states the entitlement to vote and to its use is personal to the member. It's also clear that the member must agree with the proxy when and how the vote will be cast. Similar positions can be found in the guidance for the other legislators. Are we happy to follow that so that it's between the proxy and the person who they have their vote? Yeah. We'll keep the same way. Yeah, because to be honest, that's not something that we can publish or would want to publish. That's the person's vote. Yeah. I see. So, and just talking about the behaviours within the lobbies, the guidance for the Standing Order 112 and other legislators provide useful commentary on how proxies should exercise the vote. For example, the guidance on Standing Order 112 notes that the proxy should inform the tellers and the lobby clerk that they are acting as a proxy. Is that something that we still want to maintain in the guidance? Yeah. I think that makes sense. So we'll include that. So there's a few other issues that they want to just to finish off on this one. You'll be glad to know. Members, are you happy to confirm that this scheme is not compulsory?
Yes.
Okay. Danny, so you have a hand up there.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick practical question. Just in the instance of abstention, if somebody requests that their proxy is used to abstain in a vote, does that mean that the person carrying the proxy will have to go through one lobby by themselves and then both other lobbies for the proxy?
They'll have to go, yes, you're right. So they'll have to do whatever way they're voting, and then if they're abstaining, they'll have to go through both lobbies for the person that they're holding the vote for. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you want me to include some commentary on how that might happen?
Yeah, we'll include that, some commentary on how that'll work, just to make that clear, and guidance for proxy people who hold the proxies. Yeah.
Thank you.
Members, just to seek your views on whether the fact that an MLA has availed of a proxy vote should be communicated beyond the party speaker in plenary and to the wider public. So we've already said that we will record that in the minutes, the formal minutes. Is that enough? Yeah? Yeah. Okay. So that's it. Thank you all.
Unless there's anything else anybody wants to bring up that we've missed.
So what will happen now is the clerks will now prepare a paper setting out the preferred approach identified today on each of the issues. This can then be considered in conjunction with anything we get from the Speaker or any of the other responses that we get from the 24th of May to enable the committee to reach a final position that can be reflected in a draft report to accompany the draft standing order. So we're not finished with this yet. We'll put all this together, we'll have it all together, we'll have the responses from other people, and then we'll bring that back, and the discussion will continue at the next meeting on the 29th of May. Phew, that's a lot. But that was one of the things we wanted to get through as quickly as possible. So thank you very much for all your work on that. And Robbie, thank you for getting that fostering information for us. That was very useful. Moving now on to agenda item 5. Believe it or not, one thing nearly seems to be done and we're moving on to the next one. Our next piece of work is the review of Assembly oral questions. This is not for a lot of work today, folks. That's just really to highlight that we're going to be starting this next. And I'll refer you to pages 151 and 422. Sorry, 151 to 422 of the meeting pack. The Speaker had suggested a review of the Assembly oral questions as one of the potential issues the committee may wish to prioritise in its work programme, and the committee subsequently agreed when considering our strategic priorities that this would be the first longer term piece of work to be taken forward. Members, to start this process, a range of information has been provided. As you see in your pack, there's a lot of information there, and that includes the Speaker's letter that set out some issues he suggests the committee may wish to consider as part of the review, a copy of the relevant standing orders, a number of previous committee reports on Assembly questions and topical questions. The guidance on Assembly questions is currently under review and therefore not available at this time. So, members, a discussion on what the committee may wish to cover in the review of Assembly oral questions has been scheduled in the forward work programme for the meeting on the 12th of June. So in advance of that, could I ask you to refer to your parties for views and suggestions on what areas may be included in the review to inform this discussion? Anybody, any comments on that? This is the time, if there's things that are working, that are not working with oral questions, that we have the chance now to take changes forward on that. It is a longer piece of work, so it won't be like this one where week after week we've got discussions on it. There's time to get this through. So any comments at this stage? I know I find it quite frustrating that we don't know how many supplementary questions will be taken. And why do we have 15 listed when you're only ever going to get to 10 at the most? So there's some things like that we might want to consider. The Speaker, as I say, has provided some information there. So if we could ask you to read all of that.
You see some of those things you want to consider. Occasionally they have got through them all whenever people have withdrawn questions, so maybe it's worth, before we get to that stage, maybe getting a wee bit researched on that, if that's possible.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. How many times that they've actually got or how far they've got might be a good one. And as you say, there are people who drop out. There's regulars who drop out actually. I'm very frustrated because my name never...
They're dropping out and then they're quite... I mean, I've seen pairing of 2 or 3 and that can make you go down the list quite quickly. So when you're number 14, but you're paired with number 2 or number 5, you're quite happy.
Exactly. Maybe that's the thing that works. I'm just frustrated because that hat that they have doesn't seem to get shuffled very well, and I'm hardly ever come out on it. But yeah. So one for you to think about, folks, and to take to your parties, and just to get ideas. We'll certainly do the same as we've done before. We'll be writing out to yourselves again and to party leaders and on to get thoughts on that.
Sorry, Chair, do you want us to get that research? Commissioned now, yeah, just on that particular,
I think
just on the numbers and stuff.
Because I think it's one of the things that will come up.
Good idea. Happy enough then, members? We'll get that research commissioned on how often oral questions, how far they've got. Yeah, great. Thank you very much, folks. Agenda item 6, the committee forward work programme, and that's 424 and 425 of the meeting pack. Members, the legal advice requested at the last meeting on 2 issues relating to the potential provision and standing orders of an annual debate on the Executive's legislative timetable is scheduled for consideration at meeting on the 29th of May. The 2 draft standing orders the committee has asked for on the final deadline for the introduction of the private members bill and on proxy voting in plenary for parental leave will be considered on the 12th of June. So just asking you to note that forward work programme unless anybody has anything else they want to bring up. So our next...
Can I ask in relation to that? Sorry, Chair, about pain, but I know I raised this the last day about the report being laid.
That's coming at the 29th of May, not a draft standing order, because we didn't do that.
Yes. So it's just still open for a conversation?
Well, we've written out to everybody to get their thoughts back by the 24th. Okay. So if we could get something back, that would help as well.
I suppose the question for me is, so the debate happens, it talks to the report, but changes can't be made at that point, surely can?
Well, we'll see that when we get this information through from the legal advice, that take note debate.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
It's only a take note debate?
Well, that's
debate.
Well, I think what happened at the last meeting was the committee discussed and sort of outlined what looked like their preferred approach, which was going to be a take-note debate. There was going to be a time scale for when the debate had to be scheduled following the formation of the executive, and there was going to be a time scale for the written paper to be available beforehand, etc. But then the committee decided, rather than going ahead with asking for a draft standing order to be agreed, that you get legal advice on 2 particular issues. So it's only the legal advice on the 2 issues that is coming to the next meeting. But yes, the preferred approach seemed to be that it was going to be a take-note debate with no amendments to the motion allowed and the timescales and whatever. But we're not at that stage now. We're getting the legal advice on the 2 issues.
Okay.
So it's only the legal advice that's coming to the next meeting.
Yeah, we're not rushing through on that. So the only standing orders that we'll be getting is the 12th of June, and that's for the one that the Speaker's looking for. And we sort of said we would do the introduction of the final deadline for the private members' bills or members' bills, and the proxy voting for the parental leave. Yeah. Agenda item 7, correspondence, pages 427 to 431 of the meeting pack. The committee agreed at the meeting on the 17th of April to write to the Committee for the Executive Office and the Committee for Finance and asked if there were any relevant matters raised during the discussions on the legislative consent motions, LCMs, and the common frameworks at a recent inter-parliamentary forum that either committee would like to highlight to this committee. The clerk to the Committee for Finance has responded, and the correspondence to be found at 428 to 431 of the meeting pack. The response provides information on recent discussions on legislative consent motions by representatives of the devolved administrations, and also highlights a recent LCM where the process according to Standing Order 42A has not been followed. It's just really for you guys to note at this stage, unless you want any further information, but are you happy to note that? It looks like we are moving on quite well, folks. So there are consideration on LCMs that come up at our strategic away day. We may get to that quicker. So I know that we were asked to look at that, but we've other things that we'd prioritised first, but we may actually get to that a lot quicker than we thought before. Yeah, that'll help that. Agenda item 8 then is chairperson's business. Be glad to know there are no chairperson's business. We're still waiting on the Speaker coming back with a meeting, and as soon as we get that I'll be in contact with Sinead and see if we can get that meeting, although we do have that communication now from the Speaker about the private members' business. Agenda item 9 is any other business. Anybody have anything that they want to raise? If I could just ask you if you could go back to your parties if there's anything that they want brought forward for our proxy voting before the 24th of May, if they could let the clerks know, that would be really helpful. But other than that, I don't see anybody indicating any other business. So finally then, agenda item 10, date, time and place of next meeting is in room 21 again on Wednesday the 29th of May at 10 a.m. It'll be a busy one because we will have we'll invite broadcasting to come to that one and a few other things that we've talked about. But that's it for today. Thank you very much. Apologies for the issues with broadcasting, and I'm sorry, Melissa, I didn't notice your hand there. Apologies. I will make sure I look to my left more often. But that's it, members. The meeting is now over. Thank you very much. We'll just move out of open session. Thank you.
Committee Room 21. Sound.